What's up, Spikes? We're back again here in the studio in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's the Spike Feeders coming at you with Spike on the mic, the only video podcast. Probably not, but I like to say that.
No, it is the only one.
Yeah, you can't prove it.
Yeah.
I did the research on that. I fact-checked it.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. The only video podcast. Today, we're going to be breaking down the Streets of New Capenna main set. We're not going to be going over any legendaries today because we already did a video on that. You should be able to see it on the channel. We streamed it live. So if you missed it, go check out the VOD. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the notables from the commons on uncommons, as well as all the rares and mythics, breaking down what we think they're good for and how we like them. Joining me today, as always, are my two wonderful friends, Elliot. Say hi.
Hi.
And Jim.
Hi.
Good job, you guys. Way to keep the energy.
I've never been on camera before, so it's tough. It's tough.
I don't know what to do with my hands. Today, we're going to start off with some commons and uncommons, and we're going to get right into it. So we're going to jump in today with one of my favorites from the new set, which is actually a common card. It's Boon of Safety. Costs 1 white mana. It's an instant. It says, put a shield counter on target creature. Scry 1. I really love these shield counters. I think they're a great new way to sort of have fair indestructible, the same way that Ward is fair hexproof. I think it's a really nice design. And personally, I'm going to love playing it in my Pioneer Heroic deck.
It is real good with Heroic. Obviously, because it targets a creature, it's going to trigger Heroic. I have an Annex and Simi deck that this is going to fit right into. The additional card selection is just a bonus, but you could play it in Annex and Simi. You could play it in Shu Yun. If you're playing Shu Yun Voltron, this would be a real good way to keep Shu Yun around.
Feather, too.
Ooh, Feather, yeah.
Ooh, Feather
reusing the shield counter, yeah.
Yeah, that's some good stuff.
Nasty.
Now, Elliot, here's my question for you. Between put a shield counter on target creature or protection until end of turn, what do you prefer? Because this is basically God's willing.
Right, it's very similar, right? You just replace that line. I think shield counters are going to be more useful overall because it stops damage like protection would if you're blocking something or whatever, and it stops being destroyed like protection would if they're doomblading your creature or whatever, right? It, I guess, gets around it in a different way, but I think they're functionally similar. But with the shield counter from this, even if they don't try to kill your thing, you can just end of turn, Boon of Safety, put the counter, get the heroic buff, scry 1, and it keeps the shield counter for the next time that they try to do something to it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about all that. The other thing that I was going to bring up is that God's Willing also can prevent you from casting other of your own spells depending on the color of the rule that's coming in. So I like that quite a bit.
Yep.
So let's move on unless you had anything else you say about Boon of Safety, Jim?
Nope.
All right. Next card we want to talk about, Elliot.
Next up, I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse.
Hey, gabagool.
1 blue, instant. Counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Similar to Swan Song, kind of. I think overall a little worse, especially if we are leaning, like we often do, to the higher end of the commander format especially. I think a 2/2 bird is a lot worse and therefore better to be giving than 2 treasure tokens. I think 2 is kind of a lot.
Yeah. I'm sort of 2 minds about the card. I think actually in a lot of ways, this is sort of what I would call an ideal casual counterspell. It does a lot of work in helping prevent the game from ending without being overtly or aggressively mean to a lot of strategies that you tend to see down there.
I would agree with that. I think that if you're countering somebody's commander with this, you're just like, I'm going to counter your commander, but I'll pay for the tax. You can do it again next turn. Try again later.
And my favorite part is it hits almost no commanders, basically just the planeswalkers.
Right. Yeah, non-creature spell. Interesting. Yeah,
so
I take everything that I just said back.
Yeah. But more specifically, I like the fact that it's actually giving something of note and of use because treasures are actually pretty useful, as we'll certainly talk more about in just a little bit.
Yep.
Before we get to that, though, let's talk about Slip Out the Back, another combat trick. It's 1 blue for an instant, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. It phases out.
I'm going to be referring to this card as Fart.
Well, good night, everybody.
I stole that from somebody on Twitter. I have no idea who.
Yeah.
If you're watching this, I apologize, but it's... Ooh, that's a good one. Do you get it? Slip out the...
I like this card. Phasing out is real nice, especially because of how many commanders can take advantage of Dye's triggers and that kind of thing. Yeah. I do like it more than something like Rapid Hybridization or Pongify, especially if you've got like a key creature. Like the one that's popping into my head right now is Burgi. But there's like tons of creature-based combos in Commander right now, and I think this is a really good way of dealing with them because destroy effects, you send them to the graveyard. If somebody's playing like Aristocrats or something like that, they're going to reanimate it anyway. Like the graveyard is not a permanent way to deal with things.
This is just such a handy way, especially of disrupting and protecting your own stuff, that it has so much value that I would struggle to see too many blue decks that are really focused around having creatures around or interfering with creature-based combos, not wanting to at least consider it.
Mm-hmm. Notably, this is another way that you can get people with World Gorger Dragon. You can phase it out, and then it just returns, but doesn't enter the battlefield again because that's not how phasing works.
Oh, beautiful.
Jerry, if you're watching this, I'm going to do this to you next time.
That one's for you.
Try to catch World Gorger Dragon.
There you go. Next up, we have maybe the most notable Portal 3 Kingdoms reprint since 3 visits, and that's Corrupt Court Official, which we're just excited about Portal 3 Kingdoms reprints.
Yeah, just a cool little card, 2 mana, 1/1, Human Advisor. Maybe those are relevant subtypes. When it enters, target opponent discards a card.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Panharmonicon effects going around right now, and
I like conceptually the card I'm whatever on. It's fine. But conceptually, I really like the fact that with Portal 3 Kingdoms reprints, you can reprint them in like a standard set and it doesn't totally kill the value of the Portal 3 Kingdoms version. Like we saw that with Nature's Lore in Commander Legends. We saw it with Imperial Recruiter. We saw it with the Judge promo reprint of Imperial Seal. Like they still carry a premium because they're still collectible and it is still like the rarest version of this card if you want it for your deck. I would definitely, if anybody from WotC is watching, I love Portal 3 Kingdoms reprints, even if it's like this, it's in a standard set. Like the Portal 3 Kingdoms version as of today, right now, is still $29 US.
Yeah.
And this is a common. So
nice thing to have available.
Big fan of Portal 3 Kingdoms reprints.
Yeah. And was it 3 visits, the one that was the 2 mana ramp spell that they reprinted?
Oh, yeah. Did I say Nature's Lore? I meant 3 visits. Yeah.
So anyway, I like that that's now an affordable card, but the Portal 3 Kingdoms version hasn't lost all of its value.
Yeah. Right. It loses like some of its value.
Yeah.
But again, with a lot of these, you can print them as common and they still hold like a decent amount of value for a
or
common.
3 visits, I think, was uncommon too, right?
Yeah.
Just a great card.
Yeah. So next up, we're going to talk about one of my favorite cards in the set. It's Goldhound. It's a 1 mana value 1/1 with first strike, menace, and it's a treasure dog. It's so cute. And you can sacrifice it to add mana.
You wouldn't dare.
No, I'd sacrifice it all day.
Yeah, I do dare. I will sacrifice this thing.
Oh my gosh.
Elliot's out of the Spike Feeders. Submit your application if you want to be a Spike Feeder.
This thing is the best of both worlds in terms of Skirk Prospector or Blood Pet or Wild Cantor.
When we're talking about boss slide decks,
Yeah.
what gets better than keyword soup, cheap price, and it doesn't attack anymore? Great. Here's another spell.
Any color.
Any color. Oh, it's so good.
Notably, it doesn't have haste, so you can't do it the turn it comes down like you can with Skirk Prospector. Don't add us in the comments.
Yeah.
But it is still a very good card. One thing that I'll say, this is kind of part of a big trend of WotC printing, like really pushed 1-drops in standard. That was one thing that I found about Kamigawa Neon Dynasty was in the like couple times that I played limited, there was like a lot of 1-drops that I wanted to include in my sealed deck just because like they're good. 5 years ago, this never would have been printed.
No,
1-drops were mostly unplayable.
Yeah.
I think they've done a really good job of helping smooth out both the limited sets with these sorts of things, as well as the experience that you have when you're trying to play a very, very aggro-based strategy. It seems like it's almost always viable to play mono red aggro, and I appreciate that as someone who plays a little bit more arena than I assume most people do that watch the channel.
Right. Yeah.
Next up, we've got Glittering Stockpile. It's 3 CMC. 3 CMC for a rock. Artifact Treasure says add red, put a stash counter on Glittering Stockpile. It also has tap, sacrifice Glittering Stockpile, add X mana of any one color where X is the number of stash counters on Glittering Stockpile. Another 3 mana utility rock.
Love it. Glenn Jones, if you're listening right now, home run. I don't know if this was Glenn, but Glenn actually appeared in one of our previous Spike on the Mics talking about 3 mana rock specifically. And he noted in that episode that if that their sort of measure of success when they're designing something like a 3 mana rock is not to develop the new hotness, right? They don't want to develop, for the most part, something like Arcane Signet that's just like strictly better than everything you could possibly play in that slot. What they want to do is say, here's another interesting option. and carve out a little bit of market share for Glittering Stockpile, right?
Yeah.
That's a success if the field becomes more diverse at the 3 mana rock slot.
Right.
And I think this is going to do it. This card is really good.
I say the Cursed Mirror that we saw a few sets back was a good example.
Yep. Midnight Clock.
Yeah. Oh, love Midnight Clock. But this, I think, is maybe the platonic ideal of what he was talking about. Something that doesn't come down super early, lets you get value throughout the game, and lets you pop off in the late game.
Ooh, like Replicating Ring. That's another one of those ones, the 3 mana rocks.
Yeah.
I actually got to pop off with Replicating Ring the other day in a casual game down in LA. That's real fun. I love making 8 mana rocks.
Who doesn't, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Feels good. So next up, we want to talk about maybe one of the most pushed cards in the set, but it's at common. It's 3 mana Jewel Thief, 2 and a green for a 3/3 with Vigilance and Trample, and when it enters the battlefield, create a treasure.
Yeah, on the list of things that would not have been printed 5 years ago.
I feel like even 3 years ago.
Right.
Like
This card's crazy.
this card is really pushed.
It's like, yeah, like it's probably not going to see a whole ton of play in like super old formats or Commander or whatever. But like, what you show somebody from 95 this card and their brain explodes.
Yeah.
Well, I think the nicest thing about it is it's such a body for all the 1/1 counters that we see in the set. It just says, suit me up. I'm already 3/4 of the way there. Since it already has both Vigilance and Trample, it can both block and attack for you. And it doesn't
Throw shield counters on this thing.
Exactly.
Who cares? Everything on this thing and just bop, 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 bop.
And it doesn't even matter what card types are in your graveyard.
Yeah. It's a really good Tarmogoyf that isn't a Tarmogoyf.
Yep.
So. Speaking of things that are really cool, but we really haven't seen that much of before, it's Bouncer's Beatdown. This is, I think, maybe the best example out of the cycle that is color hating in this set. So there's, I believe, 4 others of these, but this is, I think, the best one that I saw. If you disagree with me, just tell me in the comments and just at Alex down there. But anyway, Bouncer's Beatdown is 2 and a green for an instant spell that says this spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a black permanent. And especially in a 3-color set, that's going to be a lot of permanents. And it says Bouncer's Beatdown deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. If that creature or planeswalker would die, exile it instead.
Yeah. Lots to love.
Is that a weird clause at the end of a green removal spell?
I think yes and no. We've seen a lot more of this type of thing keep coming up over and over as things have gone along. And since we're starting to get some sneaky hints that maybe one of the upcoming sets might be graveyard based, and the fact that we're seeing some of the multiple different types of CMC matter in the yard, having every color have just a little bit of access to get it out of here makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be wrong. I have not done any research. This is a thought that just popped into my head. I don't remember seeing a green spell that does this when it would destroy a creature.
Not
very red
not
effect,
when it
right?
would destroy a creature. Yeah, like typically it's on like red spells.
Yeah.
Even like Syncopate does it, right? Like the counter spell.
Yeah.
But like green is not an exiling color, right? You've got like Scavenging Ooze and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Just sort of skipping a step.
right.
Yeah. So I really like this design. I really appreciate color hate, especially in a set with multicolor. I like when people and sets play with that type of idea. So I'm really excited to see how this feels, especially in the limited.
Also a real big fan of the cost reduction mechanic if you meet certain criteria. Things like Mindbreak Trap, things like, we've seen this particular one on something like Mystical Dispute.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that where they're like, they're kind of average costed cards, but then if you meet some criteria, some arbitrary criteria on somebody else's turn or something, they get a little bit better. I like that because, in a pinch, sometimes you can get this for 1, right?
Yeah, exactly. So those are all the common and uncommons we thought that were fit to talk about. So now we're going to jump into the meat and potatoes of this set, the rares and mythics. We're not doing any of the legendaries, including none of the planeswalkers right now. So these are just the Joe Schmo average cards that can't be your commander. And we're going to start with All-Seeing Arbiter, a 6 mana 5/4 with flying in blue that says whenever All-Seeing Arbiter enters the battlefield or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Whenever you discard a card, target creature an opponent controls gets -X, -0 until your next turn, where X is the number of different mana values among cards in your graveyard. We just talked about cards in the graveyard, right?
Yeah. Just an absolute house in like as a control finisher or whatever, right? 6 mana is like kind of a lot, but it's a 5 attack flyer.
Yes. He's thick. And I will say that 6 mana might not be as much as we are traditionally used to it being with all the treasure that we're seeing in this set.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, this one's an interesting one. I think this is way more effective in 1v1. It's kind of tough to pin down an entire board of attacking creatures when you're playing against 3 opponents. I would probably lean into something like Stonecloaker if you were looking for this kind of an effect on ETB. If you're playing this in a blink deck, you can definitely do worse, for sure. Yeah, I think it's fine. Not super, super high on it, but I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's just a nice control finisher. This next one I'm sure Jim's excited for because it's a 5 mana, 3 black, Angel of Suffering, which is a Nightmare Angel, 5/3 flyer with the very delicious text. If damage would be dealt to you, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards.
Is there like some kind of deck or effect that you are potentially known for playing that this kind of synergizes with?
I play this in my Kangi Angel Changeling Tribal deck. No. This is a Lich card. This is really cool because this being a replacement effect, this ability, when 2 replacement effects go to replace the same event, the controller of the event gets to choose which effect successfully replaces it. And then if the replaced event can also be replaced, then it chooses which order that player chooses which order they apply in. This is really cool with all of my Lich cards that I play in my Lich deck because Lich effects, like let's say the original Lich, right? Whenever you take that damage, you sacrifice that many permanents. Or sorry, not whenever. If you would take damage instead, sacrifice. Does Lich do that? Okay. Nefarious Lich for sure does it. It'll replace it. I'm jury's out on whether the original Lich does it. I don't remember. It has so many words on it.
It does have a lot of words.
But what you're able to do, even if it's a trigger, you can replace damage with this, mill a bunch of cards, and then with something like Lich's Mastery that says you can't lose the game. It doesn't even matter if you have no cards in your library. So you could take 100,000 damage, exile or mill all the cards in your library, and then you're either setting yourself up for the Lich that exiles from your graveyard, which is Lich's Mastery and Nefarious Lich, or you can just like sit there with the cards in your library and reanimate stuff or play stuff from your graveyard.
Yeah, I think that's like potentially a miss or whatever you want to say on this card. But the fact that it doesn't say if you cannot, you lose the game.
Yeah, that is an important line of text.
You can just mill forever, even if you have 0 cards.
Yep. Yep. And as long as you can either like you can replace your draw step with things, you can play like Island Sanctuary, you can play Solitary Confinement, prevents you from doing that. If you just like don't draw cards, or if you don't care about drawing cards because you can't lose the game, then this is just like a soft block.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Next up is my second least favorite card in the set. Arcane Bombardment, 4 red for an enchantment that reads, whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard, then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana costs. This is basically just decision paralysis, the card. I don't hate the idea of the design with different templating, with different formatting. I could understand why this is a very attractive thing to a certain type of player. This just reads, my non-deterministic combo is the most non-deterministic.
Yep. This feels like Thousand Year Storm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly
it's like
what I
a
was
very
going to say.
similar card in sort of design philosophy.
Yeah, like huge splashy effect that is just the biggest waste of my entire life to resolve. Like, stop printing this kind of thing, please.
Realistically, my biggest issue with this is going to be if they happen to get an extra turn card under it, but they don't have the ability to finish the game. Yep. Functionally, you're going to be looking at an opponent taking 10, 15, 20, 35-minute turns trying to end the game while everyone sits around staring at them. And I just don't like that kind of design.
The lesson, like put another way, have a clock. If you're going to play this card, have a clock. Respect your opponent's time.
Same thing as like casting Armageddon or whatever, right? Like if you're going to do it, please win the game soon after.
You really speed yourself up. Don't go in the tank. And especially if you've got something else under this, like an opt or something else that requires you to make decisions, snap them off.
Yep.
Moving on. Next up is Aven Heartstabber. Blue-black bird assassin, flying 1/1 that says, as long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, this card gets +2/+2 and has death touch. When it dies, mill 2 cards, then draw a card.
I think this card is really, really good.
Super
like
good.
Baleful Strix is a good card. We know that.
Yep.
This is like this is like the Baleful Strix we have at home, which is still quite good.
I like this as a multiple of in a standard style deck that's focused around filling up your graveyard. The fact that it gets out early and also gives you value when it dies, I think is the exact kind of design that most Dimir decks are going to be looking for. Having not really investigated Standard recently, I have no idea if this is competitive or not, but a 3/3 flyer in the late game and a mill stuff draw card in the late game, in the early game, doesn't seem bad.
Yep, I agree.
Plus, it's a bird assassin. That's cool.
That is sweet.
I like that.
That's some good flavor. Speaking of good flavor, we've got Black Market Tycoon, red-green, 2 mana value for a cat rogue. 2/2 body that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, Black Market Tycoon deals 2 damage to you for each treasure you control. Tap, create a treasure token.
Love this.
Yeah, it's a very anti-inflationary tech. It seems like we should have a few more Black Market Tycoons around, I guess.
Yep.
But I guess what I like and dislike about this is that it's a green color identity. I don't know that they need mana acceleration in this point. We'll get to that later. I like the fact that it punishes keeping your treasures around.
Yes. I think that that's very healthy. I kind of wish that we saw like drawbacks on treasure creation a little bit more in this set. It seems like we didn't get a lot of downside for treasure creation. It was just kind of used as a throw-in upside to maybe balance effects to the mana costs. Yeah, this one in particular, I actually really like the idea of having this kind of a persistent downside. I think that this probably could have been a commander if you made the create a treasure token effect bigger.
Yeah.
And then maybe you lean into this damage by playing things like Neheb the Eternal and that kind of thing and make a whole bunch of mana.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a suicide red kind of.
Yeah, I feel like you could have like built around this effect as a commander. But yeah, I'm not going to complain. I think this is a good card. How do you think it stacks up against something like Zerta Druid?
I think if I had my druthers, I'm probably taking Zerta Druid 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I like that it exists. I like the way it's put together, but I think Zerta Druid just does more of what I want to do in rule. Next up, we've got Body Launderer, which is just a fun name for 2 black. It's an ogre rogue, 3/3 with death touch that says, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, Body Launderer connives. Connives being draw a card, discard a card. If it's a non-land card, put a 1/1 counter on the thing that connived. It also says, when Body Launderer dies, return another target non-rogue creature card with equal or lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So I kind of like this. It's very much, again, a get it down fairly mid-game, have it die late game, get a bunch of value back.
I'm going to abuse this in Aristocrat strategies because it is disgusting.
Yep.
You sack a bunch of things, get a bunch of other things in your graveyard, and then sack himself, get literally whatever you want back at that point, probably. Even as just a 3/3. I'm pretty sure he gets back everything in my Aristocrat deck already. And then, like put 2 counters on him or something, get back like a Teysa or like
that new black dragon that also does reanimate stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This card is very cool.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of like Kalidas almost.
Yeah.
A little bit of value off of creatures dying, 4 mana, 3/3 with a keyword.
Yeah.
It's like ish. I think your assessment of this is bang on. I think any kind of Aristocrats deck is going to want this.
Elliot, tell me about Bootlegger Stash.
I guess just before we move on, sure. I do want to say the names in this set are just...
Oh, yeah. They're out of control. We're going to get to a couple of them later that I really particularly enjoy. This is one of them.
Unfortunately, Bootlegger's Stash... it's a good name, but it is a 5 and a green for an artifact that says lands you control have tap, create a treasure token. Why doesn't this have Black Market Tycoon's line of text on it? Why don't these enter tapped or cause all treasures you control to enter tapped or something like that?
Have a different color identity.
Not be green. Yeah.
So I want to preface this like section talking about this card by saying I think most people's objections are being misrepresented on this card. When you say I don't like this card, I don't particularly like this card. I'm not like losing my mind about it.
No.
I'm not like complaining. I'm not going to quit Magic because of this. And I will say it is within Green's color pie because Maro has included treasure creation as secondary in Green's color pie. It is very explicitly within pie. It's not a pie break. I still don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with Maro on everything, and I don't. I don't particularly like treasures being a green thing. I do think that if it were a case of WotC R&D like bending in green to accommodate a set that doesn't have a lot of nature, it's probably fine. Right. But I do see a trend of green color creation.
Yeah.
And, It may just be a couple one-off things that all happen to land in green.
I would say if it hadn't been for Old Gnawbone before this and a few of the other things that we've seen in previous sets where green is also getting access to treasure creation, I'd be much less uncomfortable with this trend.
Yeah.
And if it stops here, I really don't have that big of a complaint. I just feel like these type of effects keep getting reserved for green, and it feels like green has this very amorphous design at this point, which is, does it involve mana? Well, that's most cards. Does it involve creatures? Well, that's most cards.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it has a strong identity. And I ultimately feel like that's a worse problem than any individual thing that green's doing.
Yeah. It's so one of the things that I really don't like in terms of card design is when they define really fundamental concepts of the game as being part of a particular color's color pie. Mm-hmm. This is an objection that I have with white too. I think gating mana production and card draw into particular colors, I think that's negative for the game. I think it's negative for the game. I think it's negative for Commander.
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately what I value in Commander is the ability to express yourself through deck building. And if you're not able to draw cards in a color, you're just not able to build decks in that color that do a lot of things, because it's a fundamental core concept of the game to be able to draw cards.
And I will say that they, at least from my perspective, have fixed a lot of that in white. I think we're almost getting to the point where white is to where I would expect a color to be.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about white card draw, I believe, in the Commander set. I'm not sure if Benny was Commander or whether it's main set. It's Commander. We'll talk about that live.
Yeah.
But I will say that like 5 years ago, we were talking about red in the same terms that we were talking about white today.
Yep.
In terms of mana production and card draw, they've solved a lot of that stuff with treasure and with impulse draw, which is like exile from the top of your library. You can cast it either this turn until the end of next turn. And treasure felt like a really unique and flavorful way for red, being the color of artifice, to create mana. It's not a ritual, but it's like halfway to a ritual. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like halfway between ritual mana and like land ramp.
Yeah.
And it just felt like a distinctively red solution to a problem that red has. And I think that's my biggest objection, is that giving it to green, a color that already produced mana in spades, in a way that is like very counter to the way mana production has historically been handled in green.
I don't associate a lot of druids wandering into town, dropping a fat stack of gold on the local blacksmith and saying, give me a new car.
Right. And so like, if you like zoom out into the abstract where you're like, well, there can be natural treasures, right? You can find gemstones and whatever. Sure. Yeah. Okay. But you know, I also see a lot of people saying, well, you didn't have an objection with food. Like, I don't particularly like food either. Food doesn't strike me as an artifact.
No.
Right? Unless you're talking about artifacts in an extremely abstract sense.
Yeah. One of the things I saw in that is maybe that whole cycle, the clues, the blood, the food, the treasures, might have been better served being renamed resources. But I think, on the other hand, that does lend to the historical problem of now nothing removes them.
Yeah.
Right. So I think in terms of solutions that they had, did they maybe hit the best thing they could do? Maybe. Yeah. It's just it's starting to bleed and blend a little bit, and that's more of what I'm worried about. I want green to have a more focused identity than it seems to have.
Yeah, the dilution is the biggest problem for me. Yeah. As a 7 mana artifact that doubles mana effectively, I don't have a problem with this card. Functionally, I don't think it's super strong, and I definitely don't think it's bannable.
No.
So like,
it's
that's
6 mana.
If I say I don't like this card, that doesn't mean I want this card banned. Absolutely not. I think that there's like 20 different green effects that are better and maybe even more problematic than this.
Yeah.
I just sort of don't like it from the greater color pie philosophy.
Exactly. I don't want to see more of this.
Yeah.
Is where I'm at.
People have like compared it to like OG Omnath in terms of like it just stores your mana or whatever. It like it effectively is ramp or whatever, right? But I think this, like we're saying, like this is more problematic in the large spectrum of it than original Omnath's like kind of ability was.
Like if this was an artifact that you could tap a land to put a charge counter on it and then remove charge counters for mana or whatever, like that's a totally fine mechanism to use for this. Or if it was like remove +1/+1 counters from creatures, whatever.
I'd actually be down for that way more than I'm down for this.
Yeah, even if it was just like put a nondescript counter on a creature by tapping a land, and then you can remove from creatures you control to make whatever.
Sure.
And then at least when you get rid of the artifact, then they lose the ability to sack those for mana. But like when this goes away, they keep all their treasures.
Yep.
It's the fact that they are named treasure tokens.
It's
right? There's so many things that do things with treasure tokens. Like they're even more in this set as well, right?
Yeah.
Professional Facebreaker, et cetera, that I think this is.
And there are actually some examples, again, that we're going to talk about in the live thing of actually really good use of green treasure in a set that skews away from nature.
Yep.
Spoiler alert, it's the boxing ring one.
Yeah, it's
but we'll talk about it later, but yeah.
Yeah, you should have already seen that or go watch the VOD after this. Regardless, let's move on to one of the first Ascendancies we're going to run into, which is Broker's Ascendancy, which is my favorite. It's green, white, and blue enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. Atraxa decks are pogging.
Yeah,
Big fan of this.
Just a good card.
Yep.
I don't think there's too much to say about it, right? Like,
I like
if
the
you
design.
want this ability, this is a good card.
I just think it's really good design in colors that are going to be doing that kind of stuff a lot.
Yep. I also appreciate that it doesn't have as much accounting as Cathar's Crusade.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be
Very
over and over
fair.
and over. It's distinct.
Yep.
Speaking of distinct, let's talk about Cabaret Ascendancy. Red, green, white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card in your hand, you may put it on the bottom of your library.
I love card selection.
Yep.
This is good in the Naya decks, right? Like, you're going to be playing creatures. You're probably playing some, like a green-white planeswalkers, a Johnny's or something. Green-red, what's his name? Domri raids that do things with like creatures, or even Garrix, right? Even some of the mono-green Garrix.
Yep.
Just a cool card. I've seen people, I guess not complain, but compare it to Phyrexian Arena, in which they're like, well, they argue that Phyrexian Arena isn't like a good card in Commander because it takes too many turns to draw cards or blah, 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 but I'm still going to play it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that it gives you so much flexibility. You don't have to do any of the actions. You can do any of the actions. So if you're really trying to preserve an okie doke or fake people out, you don't have to reveal it. You can just draw it naturally. And so I like all of those things. Next up, let's talk about our first Hideaway, which I am a big fan of Hideaway.
Super surprised to see it come back here, but...
Well, anyway, Cemetery Tampering, 2 and a black for enchantment. Hideaway 5, so you're going to look at the top 5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 3 cards. Then, if there are 20 or more cards in your graveyard, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Love this in some of the self-mill decks we've been seeing.
Yeah, Hideaway 5 is nice too. I have definitely gotten on lower Hideaway values on stuff like Windbrisk Heights and Spinerock Knoll.
Right.
Where you're just like, look at the top 4 and you're like, oh, it's 3 lands and a card that I don't really want. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess I'll hide away this land and do nothing with this, you know?
Yeah.
So Hideaway 5 is nice to see. I also like the fact that the casting condition on this card is very achievable, right?
Yeah.
20 or more cards in your graveyard. If you're playing a graveyard focused deck, this is trivial, right?
It's like
gonna
2
happen.
turns. So yeah,
It's gonna
like
happen.
there are cards that mill like 40 cards.
Well, and not only that, but you can have the option to take care of yourself at the beginning of your upkeep, which is great.
Yep.
So next up, we've got Corpse Explosion. 1, black, red, sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Corpse Explosion deals damage equal to the exiled card's power to each creature and each planeswalker.
Love this card. I love the flavor. I love the effect. I think they captured the concept of Corpse Explosion perfectly. I think this card's great.
Yeah. No,
I think it's really great.
Very, very Diablo 2 vibes.
Yeah. I played so much Necromancer in Diablo 2, and it's like when I heard Corpse Explosion, I was like, really? Really?
Yeah, I'm a fan of not having to sacrifice a creature on the battlefield for this one. I think it's much more flavorful, and again, playing into the what's in my graveyard flavor that we're probably going to see more of later this year.
Yep.
Next up, Cut of the Prophets, X, black for a sorcery with our first casualty, and this is casualty 3, which means that we can sacrifice a creature with power 3 or more. When we do, we can copy this spell, and what we'd be copying is you draw X cards and you lose X life, and this art is disgusting, but so good.
Is this one of the Donato Giacola ones?
Yeah, just hands on hands.
There's hands in it. It's Donato.
Yeah.
Yeah. This card's interesting. I do find it interesting that the losing X life is part of the effect of the spell and not as an additional cost to cast, which means that when you copy it, you lose 2 X life. You draw 2 X cards and you lose 2 X life.
I think it's pretty well balanced. I see this getting cast a lot for 4, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I think once you get higher than that, it's a little rough. I will take a card for a life in just about every scenario. But if you're casting it for like 10, you better have a way to win the game like immediately.
I was gonna say, I can see a lot of different strategies coming out as a result of it, like wound reflections or things like that, where you're gonna have effects based on the life that you've lost or something like that.
Yep.
Maybe that's not Wind Reflection. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But
you got it.
Right. I remembered a card.
But you wouldn't want to cast this into Wind Reflection.
No,
because this would like
it would double it.
Anyway, so that's a really good example of casualty. Now another really good example of casualty is cut your losses for 4 blue for a sorcery with casualty 2. So only 2 power or greater in the creature you sacrifice to double this one up. And it says target player mills half their library rounded down. Elliot, can I kill someone for 6 mana and 2 power?
No.
Darn. That's right. Since the spells will happen sequentially, it'll be half and then essentially a quarter.
Yeah, half and then half of half, not half and then the same number you lose.
Yeah.
Diminishing returns, especially because they're on separate spells. If they were on the same spell, it might even work, maybe. You probably wouldn't put that on
because you're going to calculate the effect
half
when you resolve the effect. Any case, it doesn't really matter. The point is, I think this is another great example of the Tasha's Hideous Laughter style of spell where you're going to get a lot of value, but you're kind of paying for it.
Sure.
So mill cards are mill cards. They're interesting and fun. Next up, Depopulate. 2 white sorcery. Each player who controls a multicolored creature draws a card. Then destroy all creatures. I love Wraths for standard.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of this kind of wrath with minor upside for your opponent, like you're saying, wraths for standard.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a great card.
Great card. Next up, maybe the most mathematically interesting card.
I love this card.
Tell us about it, Jim.
This is Devilish Valet. It's a 3 mana Devil Warrior. It's a 1/3 with Trample and Haste, and it's got Alliance. So whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, double Devilish Valet's power until end of turn.
Yeah.
Big.
Thick.
Okay. Everybody at the same time, we're going to name one card that goes with this. We'll start with Elliot. We won't do it at the same time. We'll start with Elliot, then me, then Alex.
Okay.
Ready? Go.
The black one that makes 13 tapped zombies.
Yeah, I love that. Rise from the grave? Rise from the...
Something.
It's on the screen.
Whatever. Yeah,
This one.
It's somewhere here.
Just put it over Jim's face.
Yeah.
Okay, mine's Scoot Swarm. Go, Alex.
Scoot Swarm is great. I'm going to go with Sapperling spawning after Rise from the Grave.
Yeah, okay. Fine. If we're doing two cards, then I'm going Scoot Swarm and Balance Realms.
That's great. I actually just saw last night Gavin Verhey say that the 3 mana biggest possible creature has been broken with Devilish Valet.
Whatever this card is.
The 13
called.
black
What is this
mana.
Stupid card.
And then I think it's Sapperling spawning.
Army of the Damned.
Army of the Damned. There we
Right.
go. And then Sapperling spawning where it's X equal to highest power you control. So you get 1 to the 13th and then whatever that number is to the second power.
Yeah, I know something like an Undecillion.
Oh, no, Undecillion was the old record. The new record is scientific notation only. It's literally too big to be comprehended.
Yeah, we're like approaching the number of atoms in the observable universe.
Probably over, if being honest. So next time you want to tell your friends that Magic's a cool game, tell them that you can deal more damage than it's possible to conceive. So yeah, Devilish Valet is great. Next up, we've got Endless... Oh, sorry. It also has Trample and Haste, which on a creature like this, great combo.
You mean I can make it an Undecillion on 3 and then smash?
It doesn't have the Malignus problem where you're like, oh, it's a 30-30. And somebody's like, I'll block with my bird.
Yeah. Next up, we have Endless Detour, which is a Bant card, so green, white, blue. Instant. The owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in a graveyard puts it on the top or bottom of their library.
This is infinitely flexible.
Yeah.
This card does everything.
It's so
Literally
good.
everything.
This card, it does Downward Dog, it does Sun Position, it does the weird one where you put your arm down like your spine. It's just the yoga of cards. It's great. I love the flexibility. It's fantastic.
If there's one thing I will say about how Alex just described that card, it's that this card probably does it.
Yeah. Wow. Y'all got to learn to keep a straight face when you're doing these things. Next up, we're going to talk about Even the Score. X blue for an instant with another cost reduction, so you know Jim's going to love it.
Yeah, I love this card.
This spell costs 3 blue less to cast if an opponent has drawn 4 or more cards this turn. It says, draw X cards.
I think this card's cool.
It's great.
Think about how often you're going to be in a situation where somebody's drawn 4 cards in a game of Commander.
Like a lot.
This is great to follow up after Wheels. It's great to follow up when people are, I don't know, like comboing off. Think about like you know,
Consecrated Sphinx.
Chase plays the Locust God.
That's exactly what I was just about to
right?
bring up.
Like
yeah.
this is just like pay 4 mana, draw 4 cards at instant speed if
Yeah.
you're playing against somebody that's playing a particularly unfair deck.
Yep.
I think this card's great.
It has a lot of utility. It does what blue wants to do, and it does it in a way that's mana efficient. I don't think you can really ask for more.
Yep. I think that this is a really cool card because it scales with the power of the cards that you're playing against. Right. So if people are playing more powerful decks, this gets better.
Yep. So next up, we've got one of my favorite puns in the set, Evolving Door, which is a revolving door that says 2 and a green artifact, 1 and tap it, sacrifice a creature. Then count the colors of the sacrificed creature. Then search your library for a creature card that's exactly that many colors plus 1. Exile that card, then shuffle. You may cast the exile card, activate only as a sorcery. So now that we've read that essay, what can we do, Elliot?
This is like, obviously birthing pod with extra steps kind of a thing. Doesn't put the creature into play. Works with colors instead of mana value, which I think is super cool. I actually don't love it, though. I think it's a little like weak
It's
in
pretty
terms of
narrow,
the effect. Right.
Like
narrow is
it's
maybe the word I'm
pretty narrow.
looking for. Yeah.
So I'm probably missing something in terms of combo potential with this card. I don't think that this needed a sorcery only clause on it. I don't think that because you have to pay full ticket for the creature and you're guaranteed to only get creatures that have colors, which means that they have casting costs, right? I think the combo potential of this card is minimal. It doesn't put it into play. I don't know. Every time I read this card like 4 times, and every time I read it, it got worse.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like this card.
I don't think it's the best thing in the world. However, it does turn your Ornithopter into Dockside Extortionist for 3 mana. So it doesn't have no potential.
Yeah, it's like 7 mana though, right? Because you have to pay 3 for the Evolving Door and 1 to activate it.
Isn't Dockside
And then
2?
you have to cast Dockside after you find it.
Isn't Dockside 2? Wouldn't that be 6?
6.
It's 3 plus 1 plus 2 is 6. Yeah. Okay.
That doesn't really matter. The point is that that's maybe the best case scenario I can come up with. And that doesn't seem that great.
Yeah.
So does it probably have an effect in some kind of deck? Absolutely. I can't see it. So.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's an attempt to print like a more... I don't even think I would compare this to Birthing Pod because I don't think they're very similar cards. I think this is probably closer to like Survival of the Fittest. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, next up is Extraction Specialist. It's a 2 and a white for a human rogue with lifelink on a 3/2 body that says, when Extraction Specialist enters the battlefield, return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. But that creature can't attack or block for as long as you control Extraction Specialist.
Oh, I don't care about that line of text. This is a combo card if I've ever seen one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what you getting?
Safi Eric's daughter.
Ooh, yeah.
That mana value, right? But so like not obscenely busted, not getting Karmic Guide or Revel Arc immediately at least, but yeah.
Well, you know what else is 2 mana value?
Dockside Extortionist.
Sure is.
Really?
Yeah.
But Alex, your Dockside won't be able to attack or block.
Oh, no, Jim.
Oh, no.
That's why I play that card.
But yeah, Extraction Specialist, I like that they're starting to play around a little bit more with white getting direct back to the battlefield without any more onerous subjections to it, like brought back used to have to be that turn, some of the things like that. I like that they're being a little bit more loose.
Yeah, they're playing this. They're playing like Imperial Recovery Unit from Kamigawa.
Yes.
I really like that card a lot.
Exactly.
Just like mini Sun Titans. I think that's a great way to mitigate card disadvantage in white.
And it usually tends to be on the lower end of the spectrum where white tends to be anyway.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah. Next up is Fight Rigging, our next Hideaway card. It's 2 and a green for an enchantment with Hideaway 5. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Then, if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. It's just generically good.
Yep. Again, same as Cemetery thingamabob, right? Love it.
That's
Just
good
a cool
stuff.
neat little hideaway card.
I know you're extremely excited about the next one.
Ooh, yeah. We've got Hold Me Closer, Fleetfoot Dancer. 1 red, green, white for a creature elf druid, 4/4, trample, lifelink, haste.
Ooh.
This is like just better Mantis Rider?
Well, hold on now. Well, don't subject my boy to that. This is 4 mana.
Yeah.
It doesn't fly, but it does have trample, and it does have lifelink instead of flying vigilance haste. I think they go in the same deck.
Sure.
That's what I think.
Yeah. What deck is that?
That deck is Canadian Highlander mess of a deck that I like to call 5-color lo-fi beaters to beat Jim's ass with. That's a sick shout out to Calvin, I believe, is the one that came up with that from our Discord. And I don't know.
Fair enough.
That's also a throwback. God, we're deep in the weeds now.
Yep.
But yeah, we used to play a lot of Canadian Highlander over our lunch breaks while we were working from home.
Yeah, back when we were just pandemic babies.
Yeah, when we thought it would be over soon. And a lovingly named deck for just slapping Jim around too.
Yep, and that happened a lot.
I really like these good soup cards. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Good soup.
I saw you liked Hold Me Closer, Fleetwood Dance.
I almost died because I was drinking during it,
like
so
that?
thank you for that.
That's a good one.
That's
Again, not my joke. Stole that from somebody on Twitter.
I mean, everyone steals everything.
Shout out.
Speaking of stealing from people on Twitter, it's Gala Greeters. It's 1 and a green elf druid for a 1/1 with Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that has not been chosen this turn. You have 3 options. You can put a 1/1 counter on Gala Greeters. You can gain 2 life, or you can create a tapped treasure token. Give me more tapped treasure tokens.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Again.
like tapped as a way to mitigate it.
Yeah, why isn't that on more of the cards in this set? But
Yeah.
very interesting card. 2 mana for just like
A bear or
just a whole host of abilities, right? Like in theory, in some kind of elf deck, you're doing all 3 of these every turn, right?
Yep.
Like I guess we're just talking about decks Elliot plays this episode. I have a creature only elf deck with Umori the Collector as a companion. And I think this card probably finds a home in that. Like it just grows itself, ramps for next turn, keeps me healthy.
Yeah.
Like I think this card is
hard
great.
to beat. And especially it doesn't make it worse if you're having creatures come in on other people's turns.
Right.
In fact, it's almost better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you could do it on other people's turns.
You're welcome.
Oh, Alex.
It's big brain time.
Dirt nasty.
Dirt nasty. Speaking of dirt nasty, let's talk about Getaway card. Jim, this set has been excellent for vehicles for you, and I think this one is the second best one.
I think they've reached a bit of a sweet spot with making vehicles. I think they've kind of early vehicle design was bad.
Just not even beating around the bush. Yeah.
It's they were like really overcosted. Like if you look at it's the same with a lot of creatures just in general, is that stuff was really, really, really overcosted.
With the notable exception of Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah. Yeah. But even then, like that card's not breaking commander, right?
It's just breaking everything else.
Yeah. It kind of exploited a couple weaknesses that other formats have that commander doesn't.
Yep.
Namely lower life totals and a lot of other stuff. But they're more aggressively costing vehicles these days, and I'm glad they are, because I think this is a totally fine vehicle. It's not going to break anything. But this is a 3 mana 4/3 vehicle with haste and crew 1. Whenever Getaway car attacks or blocks, return up to 1 target creature that crewed it to its owner's hand. This is a really good way to get kind of double or triple or quadruple value out of ETB effects on your creatures.
Hey, Alex, what has power of at least 1 and an ETB effect?
That's my favorite Goblin Customs official.
Yep.
Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker.
Yeah.
No, obviously Dockside Extortionist. Yep.
Yeah. It's a really good way to cast your Dockside Extortionist more than once. I don't think I would play that in a deck specifically to do that.
No.
I think the decks where I'm looking to make huge mana with Dockside Extortionist is probably not the deck that I'm playing this.
Right. I'm probably going infinite, not one more time.
Realistically, though, this is the type of card that could get out of hand quite easily in a ostensibly casual deck. Being able to repeat enters the battlefield effects by simply recasting something over and over is something that most decks aren't necessarily going to have an answer for. The fact that it has to attack or block will probably help mitigate that to a certain extent.
Yeah, this is a deck. I will also note that with the way that crewing works, vehicles don't lose their crew ability once they're crewed. So you can crew, if you have 5 creatures, you can use all of them to crew with Getaway car, and you can do it at different stages in the game, right? So you can say, I want to crew my Getaway car and then like sacrifice something or whatever. I want to crew my Getaway car. You can just keep crewing it if you just want to use it as a way to tap creatures. And each one of those are eligible to return to your hand so that your opponent might not know what you're going to return if they're talking about spot removal or anything like that.
Give them the okie doke.
Yeah. And it does target, so you do have to give up that information in your combat step. But anyway, I will say this is probably a card that I would include in a deck like Yarok. If I was playing a Yarok deck, this seems really good, like really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Or any other deck where you're really heavily focusing on ETBs.
Where you're panharmoniconing.
Yep.
Yeah. Next up is Halo Fountain. It's 2 and a white for an artifact that has 3 abilities on it. The first ability is white tap, untap to tap creature you control, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. 2 white tap, untap 2 tapped creatures you control, draw a card.
Draw a card.
Well, in white as well. 5 white tap, untap 15 tapped creatures you control. You win the game.
Ooh.
I love this card.
Great card.
I was telling Elliot, this card was spoiled when I was staying with Olivia Gobert-Hicks and Brian Kibler last week. And I read this card. It was like 8 a.m. when it came out in LA. And I'm reading this card and I'm like, and then I hand the phone to Olivia and she did the exact same thing. And Brian's like, what are you guys looking at? And we hand it to Brian and he did the exact same thing. We're like, what a bizarre card.
I really like this design. White having more. Oh, okay, buddy. Okay, you got 5 mana. You got 15 tap guys. Do whatever you want. Like the sheer silliness here is what I really love. And there's so many ways to make it a little bit less silly. I really like that.
Yeah, I think the fact that it makes its own creatures and or draws you into things that will presumably make you more creatures.
Yes.
Or mana. And then it wins the game.
And it rewards you for attacking.
Yep.
I think that's a very white card. It's got a very white concept. It feels very well put together from top to bottom. Whoever designed this, pat yourself on the back. This is a quality mythic.
Yeah.
Like compared to gain 13 life, I will take this every set.
Or like return all enchantments from your graveyard to the battlefield.
No,
You know.
give me something like this. Let white be a little bit more weird. Let us fulfill nonsense. I'm a big fan of this. Next up, Horde Hauler. 3 and a red for an artifact vehicle with trample 5/5 and crew 3. It says, whenever Horde Hauler deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token for each artifact they control.
Yes.
I love this.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is the best red vehicle that exists.
Yeah.
I think that's probably true.
Yep. It's like big enough with trample that you're going to connect. If you crew with it, I think the crew value is reasonable. It's got some real good upside. I think it's great. It also gives your opponent the option to sacrifice some of their artifacts to avoid ramping you, which I think is really cool.
Right.
I like that decision point. Like when you dockside into somebody else's dockside and they're like, how many of these do I want to give up?
So you're not as accelerated.
You know?
Yeah.
I think that's a really positive thing, but it's not just for treasure tokens. It's all artifacts. So there are some of them that they're not going to be able to avoid. This is loads better than Mizium Tank. You can quote me on that.
You can quote me.
Mizium Tank BTFO.
Like Mizium Tank was like, oh, you've got this repeatable ETB effect, and what's your upside on it? It crews the vehicle, and it's like a 3/3 with trample. Oh, okay, now it's a creature. Good job.
Good job. Speaking of a great job, next up is Hostile Takeover. 2 blue, black, red. For a delicious Grixis sorcery. Up to 1 target creature has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. Up to 1 other target creature has base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. Then Hostile Takeover deals 3 damage to each creature.
I love this card again. I like Wraths for standard or whatever, right? Make your Crater Hoof a 1/1, make my whatever a 4/4, kill everything.
It's really, really fun. I like the flavor of it. I love the art on this. I think it's Vincent Proce. Can't read that text that far away. Point is it looks good, feels good. I think it's a nice effect. Really, really great, especially in a sealed environment, I'd imagine.
I think that there are some commander decks that want this too.
Yeah.
This is it's kind of a hybrid between a wrath and spot removal, right? Because you can like guarantee that 1 creature dies.
Yeah.
And then you kill a whole bunch of dorks and you get to guarantee that 1 of your creatures lives. I think that's a really cool effect.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I really just like the fact that it's doing some play around stuff in the same manner that a lot of the nickel bolus effects have existed in.
Yeah.
Where it just says, oh yeah, you can have something. Well, we're going to play with your guy and now it's dead.
I think this is a wrath that I would play in my Vial Smasher deck.
Fair
Keeps
enough.
Vial Smasher
Keeps
around.
Vial Smasher around.
It clears out some dorks and stuff like that. I historically have a really hard time playing against token strategies. I think this is a Vial Smasher board wipe slam dunk.
Well, if you have some hard times playing against token strategies, let me tell you about this next card. Incandescent Aria. Red, green, white for a Naya color identity. Sorcery. Incandescent Aria deals 3 damage to each non-token creature.
I think this is a board wipe that I want to play if I'm playing tokens.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Honestly, I really like this because it does something that I am unaware of anything else doing. I don't know that there's this version of this. Like the closest thing I can think of is Martial Coup for 5 or more.
Right.
I just like something that pays you off so heavily for over-investing in a strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that this is 3 mana is like kind of crazy, right? Like it's, yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah. Next up is the only card that we're going to talk about in this cycle, and that's Jetmeer's Garden. It's a mountain forest plains land with enters the battlefield tap and cycling 3.
Yeah, it's the other 5 triomes.
Yeah.
Right. They're all here, but
have been not a big fan of what these cards have been doing to Modern.
Go to Modern.
really,
Yeah. Well, all the sets that have fetches that can go get these, they've kind of turned into color soup.
Yep.
Right.
That's fair.
So
very fair.
I don't like that. I don't hate that these exist, but once again, fetch lands are showing why they might be the worst design mistake in Magic.
Fetch lands are pretty egregious. Yeah. It used to be once upon a time that it was tough to play high color decks. Now it's pretty much trivial to come up with 5 color mana base.
So long as you've got
for cheap.
a few $100s to throw at the problem.
Yeah, I don't think that you should like have to pay for good fixing, but I do think it should be difficult if you're playing a 5 color deck to like make Grixis color identity and then turn around and make Selesnya, right? That should be tough to do on turn 3 of the game.
Yeah, and we're just not there anymore. And I think that the eternal formats or the semi-eternal formats suffer for it a little bit. But in any case, I'm glad they finished the cycle. I like finished cycles.
I think it's a good cycle.
Big fan of that. So we're not going to skip. We're not going to talk about any of the other 4. You'll see them on screen here briefly. It's a whole cycle. Next up is Ledger Shredder. Wow, that's hard to say. Ledger Shredder. Wow. 1 and a blue for a Bird Advisor 1/3 with flying that says, whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Ledger Shredder connives, which is again, just draw a card, discard a card. If you discarded an online card, put a 1/1 counter on this creature.
This is like a baby Crom.
Yeah, just a cool little guy. It's good.
Little baby Crom. And it's a Bird Advisor. What's not to like?
Yeah, it's good stuff. Next up is Mastros Ascendancy. Blue, black, red for a Grixis enchantment. Once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard by sacrificing a creature in addition to paying its other costs. If the spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile instead. I really like this card.
It's cool. Again, I think it's kind of a lot of words.
Yeah.
To like not do anything too crazy.
Have I told you about Gas Station Sushi?
I have not heard about Gas Station.
So let me tell you about Gas Station Sushi. Gas Station Sushi is Mastros Ascendancy, cast Demonic Consultation for Thassa's Oracle.
Okay.
Find Thassa's Oracle, cast Thassa's Oracle. Retain priority after trigger, sacrifice Thassa's Oracle,
Cast it off of Maestro's Ascendancy.
Cast it off of Maestro's Ascendancy. Now, just like Gas Station Sushi, there's a small chance of everything going horribly wrong. But it makes a very, very compact way to win a game at that level. I don't know that it's going to be a good CEDH finisher, but the potential exists.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think there's other more interesting lines that are along the same vein.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not high on this card. Yeah, it doesn't give me the oomph, you know?
The oomph.
I feel like if I'm sacrificing a creature, I still have to pay for the mana cost. That is a little rough because I'm probably just paying like small stuff. I guess you can use this to protect your creatures if you've got counter spells in your graveyard on your turn.
You can only do it on your own turns, but yeah.
Yeah, you can protect your own stuff if you've got counter spells in your
Oh,
graveyard.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I'm sacrificing creatures, I should get a little bit of a better payoff than just giving something like actual full ticket flashback.
Right.
I suppose. I'm of two minds about it. I think having things that sort of draw out value, especially from instants and sorceries, is good in those types of decks, especially when you're having such an abundance of things like zombie tokens, 0/1 black thralls, stuff like that that you really don't have a use for other than to sacrifice it.
Yeah.
I just think it gives another use for those types of decks.
Yeah, I fully expect to see this card in decks. I don't expect to play it.
That's fair. Moving on, we've got Mastros Diabolist. Diabloist?
Diabolist?
Maestro's Diabolist.
Wow, Gesundheit. Blue, black, red for Vampire Warrior 1/4 with Death Touch and Haste. Whenever it attacks, if you don't control a devil token, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red devil creature token with. When this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target.
I'm a huge fan of devil tokens. This is something that not a lot of people know about me because I only started talking about it recently, but I like devil tokens a lot. I just really like the idea of like punishing people for wrathing your big board of tokens. Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. Once you get past like 4 or 5 devil tokens in play, if you're playing like Burn Down the House or you're playing Zerzoth or any of those, once you get past 4 or 5, it makes people like think twice about wrathing, because then you're just like, oh, you're going to get punished if you wrath, right? It also makes like blocking really difficult, because you can be like, okay, well, I'm going to attack with 5 1/1s. And people are like, okay, well, I'll chump with my board or with my 2 3/3s or whatever. Like, you're going to lose both of those, or not, maybe not both of them, but you'll lose one of your 3/3s. Yeah. Which is something that you can't really do when you're playing other like small dorky token decks.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just really like the way the devil tokens play.
Fair enough.
Next up, we've got Meeting of the Five, which is a sorcery for 3 white, blue, black, red, and green. Exile the top 10 cards of your library. You may cast spells with exactly 3 colors from among them this turn. Add white, white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green. Spend this mana only to cast spells with exactly 3 colors.
It's like Conflux with more steps. Less steps?
If you cast this, cool.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You did it.
Honestly, cool.
Yeah.
I cannot think of the deck that wants this.
No.
Maybe like, I don't know,
5-color soup?
Horde of Notions, something like
Maybe.
that.
Or like you can cast it in like Joda for Wooburg,
Yeah,
and
I
then
like it for
add
Joda.
double Wooburg and then use that to cast 2 of the things.
But you can only cast things with 3
you
colors.
can only spend it. Yeah. So I don't know.
It's not bad. I think it's one of the big dumb mythics, and
Right.
it's the maybe
Yeah,
the
like
biggest
somebody
thing.
is going to do something really cool with this, I'm sure. It's not me.
Wow me with this. I doubt I see it in anything other than what it's specifically designed to do. Next up, Mysterious Limousine, 3 white artifact vehicle. 4/4 with crew 2. It says, whenever Mysterious Limousine enters the battlefield or attacks, exile up to 1 other target creature until it leaves the battlefield. If a creature is put into exile this way, return each other card exiled with Mysterious Limousine to the battlefield under its owner's control.
Cool card. It's like an O-Ring or like a Banisher Priest that you get to reset if a bigger threat comes along, and that's usually the biggest impediment to playing that kind of an effect, is that you don't want to waste it.
Right. You use it on something and somebody else plays something bigger.
Yep.
That and it's on a 4/4, and I don't know about you, but I'm a pretty big fan of 4/4s.
Yeah. I also like that this kind of forces bad blocks for people, because if they have like 3 creatures out and one of them's a 5/5 and the other ones are 3/3s or even 4/4s, you can just like O-Ring one of their creatures.
Yeah. Also, it's on ETB or attack, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to deal combat damage or whatever. So yeah, like you're saying, you do it like in the combat step, tricky stuff.
Yeah, I will also note that this does not have to target your opponent's creatures, so you can use this to blink things, which is really cool. Yeah, you could just like attack somebody, exile one of your other creatures, and then attack somebody else the next turn and return that original creature to play. It's another great way to recycle, kind of like the other vehicle. Great way to recycle creature ETBs.
Yeah, pretty big fan. Next up, Obscura Ascendancy, white, blue, black for an Esper enchantment. It says, whenever you cast a spell, if its mana value is equal to 1 plus the number of soul counters on Obscura Ascendancy, put a soul counter on Obscura Ascendancy and then create a 2/2 white spirit creature token with flying. As long as there are 5 or more soul counters on Obscura Ascendancy, spirits you control get +3/+3. This is the most complicated Beastmaster's Ascension I've ever seen.
I think this card's bad.
Yeah.
It just seems like so much work to get relatively mediocre value.
Right. To get +3/+3 on spirits only.
Yeah, I could see what does Alayla make? Are those fairies or are those
Fairies.
spirits? It's fairies, hey?
Yeah.
I could see this in an Alayla deck.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I feel like there is a lot of spirit tribal stuff out there. I just don't know how much of it's black. And I
just don't know how you're ever getting counters on this.
It's very difficult.
Right. So you have 1 plus the number. So you have to cast a 1-drop, then a 2-drop, then a 3-drop, right?
And I mean, if you're going to get full value out of it, you want to be doing that to get the spirit tokens. And if you're not doing that, I guess you're what's the thing where you tick counters up when you target them?
Proliferating?
Proliferating it. Either way, this seems like a lot of hoops to jump through for not a lot of stake.
Yeah, not very good.
Yeah. Any case, let's move on to a card that might be better. Obscura Interceptor, 1 white, blue, black for a Cephalid Wizard, 3/1 with flash and lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, it connives. When it connives this way, return up to 1 target spell to its owner's hand.
Love this card.
Yep.
Oh, well, okay. Love this card, but also look how they massacred my boy. This is not what a Cephalid looks like.
Yeah? You don't think so?
They got tentacles. They got beaks, bro. I'm talking Odyssey.
This is
Cephalids.
the new Capenna version of M15 slivers.
Yeah, this is disgusting.
So goblins can look any way on any number of planes, but cephalids have to have beaks and tentacles.
Beaks and tentacles.
Okay.
I don't know. If you saw this art, would you say that that's a cephalid?
If I saw this art, I wouldn't know that it was anything.
This is, you know when people say that like a Pop-Tart's a ravioli? Patton Oswalt says, if somebody brought you a Pop-Tart when you asked them for ravioli, would you be upset? And that's the best test for it, right?
Yeah.
If you said, bring me a cephalid, and they brought you this dude.
You know what? I got to be honest. I would be much more likely to play this cephalid in a like D&D campaign than the old cephalids.
Sure.
What?
Beaks and tentacles, bro.
Not for me, thanks. I don't want to walk into a village and be strung up by my own tentacles. So yeah,
we're gonna get demonetized. Let's not.
Yeah, D&D's demonetizable.
Yeah, the effect very cool though.
I'm a huge fan of interacting with spells on the stack.
Yep.
There was another spell earlier that did that in Bant. Like to see it in Esper as well.
Yeah, like Mystic Snake-esque or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Can't get enough. Love it.
Big fan, huge fan. Next up, huge fan of Park Heights Pegasus. Green and white for a Pegasus 2/1 with flying and trample. I love flample. It's my biggest confidence.
2-mana 2/1 with upside again.
Yeah. Great. Whenever it deals combat damage, to a player, draw a card if you've had 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield this turn. I love this.
Yep,
it's the conditional snake touch. I'm a huge fan of it having more token tie-in. I think this helms a lot of sealed packages at pre-release.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I guess we probably would have gone over it when we do the Legends stuff, but Jetmeer, I'm putting this in a Jetmeer deck. I'm making tokens. I'm drawing cards. I'm giving them plus 97 trample, double strike, whatever.
My favorite card to pair with Parks Heights Pegasus, Assemble the Legion.
Oh yeah.
Gross.
A little bit of gross. Speaking of a little bit of gross, let's talk about Elliot's favorite card in the set, maybe. Go for it.
Again, on this set's names, knocking it out of the park. Professional Face Breaker.
Super good.
Oh, baby.
2 and a red for a human warrior, 2/3 with Manache. And whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. And sacrifice a treasure, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn.
This card's insane.
Yeah, this card's wild.
Please no one show this to Bill.
Yeah.
I actually mastered in face breaking. That's not something that a lot of people know about. Which is good. I was able to find a job in my industry right out of school.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this card's wild. Alex, tell me, does this first trigger, if I attack 3 players, does it make me 3 treasure tokens or does it make me 1?
So what it's telling you is when you deal unique amounts of damage to unique players, you get 1 treasure token. So if you deal 1 or more damage to a player, you get a treasure token, no matter how many creatures it's spread out over, but you need to be dealing it to a player. So if you're playing 4 people, your maximum is 4.
So it'll give you 1 per player that you damage with at least 1 creature.
Per combat, correct.
Combat, nice. Yeah, this card's wild.
Yeah, big fan of it. I like that it has menace. I like that it's 3 mana 2/3. I love 3 mana 2/3s in red with upside because it just says, oh, I'm going to make things a little difficult, but if you can do it, pay off.
Yeah. Plus it's got menace.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's got menace. This thing's connecting. Most combats, this thing is connecting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is an Agila card, if I've ever seen one.
That's exactly why I said don't show it to Bill.
Yeah. Why has it got warrior subtype?
I know, right?
Why does it need a warrior subtype?
Well, are you kidding me? Look at those fists. You going to tell them that they don't have good fists?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I saw some people again on Twitter. The fact that you can just sack a treasure to get rid of the top card of your library makes this go pretty well with not exactly like Future Sight top, but like that kind of effect. Like if you're in like a Bolas Citadel type deck where you get stuck with a land or whatever, you can just sack an extra treasure if you're doing things.
Or if you're playing that kind of a deck, you can play it with Mystic Forge. That's another way to get rid of stuff. Or Vizier of the Menagerie if you're in Gruul. There's lots of situations where you want to exile the top card of your library.
Yeah, I think this is just a generically good card that makes a lot of red decks.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Rabble Rousing. 4 and a white for an enchantment with Hideaway 5. Whenever you attack with one or more creatures, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Then if you control 10 or more creatures, you may play the exile card without paying its mana cost.
Teacher, what if I play this, exiling Halo Fountain, and then attack with 15 creatures, and then cast my Halo Fountain, and then untap my 15 creatures?
Well, boy, howdy, I hope you have 5 white mana so you can win that game. But yeah, that works.
That's a game you're going to be telling stories about
for a long time.
That happens.
With one or more, create that many?
It's super good.
Are you joshing me?
Well, talking of cards that go really, really well with Assemble the Legion.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Assemble the
so
Legion.
great.
This goes with Reese the Redeemed. This goes with any like pick a go wide token strategy. This goes with it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I really like some of the things that they've done that aren't just straight up doublers. They're doublers if you do something.
Yeah. Like you have to attack with them, but crazy.
Big fan. So let's talk about Reservoir Kraken. 2 blue for a Kraken. That's a 6/6 body for 4 mana value. It has Trample and Ward 2. That's really aggressive for blue. At the beginning of each combat, if Reservoir Kraken is untapped, any opponent may tap an untapped creature they control. If they do, tap Reservoir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue fish creature token with this creature can't be blocked.
It's Desecration Demon.
It's Desecration Squid. Desecration Kraken.
Yeah.
I really love this. I also love that they're starting to more systematize tokens into having strong identities. Like we talked about devil tokens earlier. Those have been around for a long time. I really hope that we see 1/1 blue fish creature tokens because they're more generic with can't be blocked. I really like that they're starting to push these things a little bit more consistently and having an aggressive beater at 4 mana value with Ward 2.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible to remove. It's just very difficult. I think this makes a lot of blue decks very attractive to play.
Yeah, and like Kraken Sea Monsters, those kinds of decks already are kind of cool because they've got really specialized board wipes and other things that don't hit Krakens, like a lot of one-sided stuff specifically for these. I feel like if you play this into what's the Whelming Wave, right? Then none of your opponents have untapped creatures.
Can't tap with a creature you don't
and
have.
You've just got a 6/6 beater with trample. Like,
well, like the crazy part too, right? Is if they tap this down 6 turns in a row, now I'm attacking you with 6 1/1 unblockable fish.
Yep.
It doesn't really. You're getting value.
It's
one or the other.
up and up and up. Yeah, love this.
Big fan of it. Next up, let's talk about Riveteers Ascendancy, black, red, green, a Jund enchantment that says whenever you sacrifice a creature, does Jund do that?
Nah, I never heard of it.
Yeah, I never heard of him doing that. You may return target creature with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Only do this once each turn.
My heart broke when I read the do this only once each turn line of text. Like, I get it, but also
get it? It's necessary.
Yes, but also
we need more content. Wizards, please stop making no combos.
I could have had this.
Yeah. This is one of the few times you're ever going to hear me comment on the art. I think this is really cool.
Oh, 10 out of 10.
This is a very specific reference to a very iconic photo. We'll put it up here. I just think it's a really cool callback.
I actually wrote a paper on that photograph for one of my art appreciation classes.
Really?
Because it's that iconic.
It's pretty incredible.
It's just a really good piece. Of all the places that you would have told me workers' guilds were going to show up, I don't know that I would have called Jund.
Yeah.
Yeah, Riveteers being Jund is like, it's weird in our, like, I guess, built up like idea of what Jund is, but
regardless, cool. I'm a big fan of this card.
Yeah.
Next up, let's talk about Sanctuary Warden, 4 white for flying, 5/5 Angel Soldier. Sanctuary Warden enters the battlefield with 2 shield counters on it, and whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, love that templating, you may remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control. If you do, draw a card and create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token.
think it's fine.
It's cool.
It reminds me of Angel of Invention.
Yep.
It's a little bit slower than Angel of Invention, I guess.
And it doesn't have the Anthem option.
Yeah.
I like that it's a 6 mana 5/5 flyer that says I can eat 2 pieces of removal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, if like obviously you're a white deck, if you're doing token things and counter things, even +1/+1 counters, right? In like mono white or whatever, you're drawing cards. You're making more tokens that can hold more counters to let you draw more cards.
I really do like that in this set. They kind of went in on white can have card draw if it does what white things do.
Yes. Yeah. I will also say that shield, like you mentioned, it's, it eats 2 pieces of removal. It actually has to eat 3 pieces of removal to die, right?
Yeah.
Which is another way. It's not so much card advantage as it is mitigating card disadvantage, right? Because if your opponents have to burn 2 or 3 cards to deal with your threat, you are gaining advantage on that. Right.
Strictly,
It's maybe not as exciting as explicit, like draw a card on a card,
but it is effective.
it is effectively like this dodges a wrath. It dodges your own wrath.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge
That's
fan
kind
of
of
that.
cool.
Next up, we've got Sanguine Spy. 2 and a black for a 2/3 vampire rogue with menace and lifelink. Pay 1, sacrifice another creature, look at the top card of your library, we may put it into our graveyard. At the beginning of your end step, if there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Sort of just generically useful mid-range black creature.
Yeah. Not super excited about this. But yeah, again, it'll probably fill some holes in like a standard strategy or even limited.
I'm not entirely sure where this goes, but if it goes somewhere, I assume it does pretty good work.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Scheming Fence.
Scheming.
Scheming Fence. You heard it here first. Scheming Fence.
Scheming Fence.
That is a 2 mana Azorius. Sorry, not Azorius. Whatever blue and white is.
that is Azorius.
It is Azorius. It's a creature, human citizen, 2/3. As Scheming Fence enters the battlefield, you may choose a non-land permanent. That's this card. This card's so good. I'm getting excited. I'm not even done reading it. Activated abilities of the chosen permanent can't be activated. And Scheming Fence has all activated abilities of the chosen permanent except for loyalty abilities, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate these abilities.
This is like cooler Pithing Needle.
Yeah.
Like super cool.
Your Deathrite Shaman? Our Death.
Yeah,
yours can't activate.
This does differ from Pithing Needle / Phyrexian Revoker in a way that it has to be a card on the battlefield that you choose. You can't just choose the name of a permanent. So it does have to be targeting, not really targeting, but it does have to be focused on one thing in play. I think it's really cool though, because it gets all the abilities.
Yeah.
This, I feel like there might be some potential here to do some of the same things that Necrotic Ooze does, because you can use activated abilities without any of the downsides or triggered abilities that come sometimes as downsides for cards. The main example being Phyrexian Revoker. If you were to revoke, or not Phyrexian Revoker, Phyrexian Devourer.
Yeah.
If you were to Scheming Fence at Phyrexian Devourer, you could just make it infinitely large by exiling your library with no downside of having to sacrifice it, which is kind of cool. If you
it only copies the activated.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think whatever you're doing with Necrotic Ooze, you can probably do almost the same things with this.
Yeah. Just a different flavor to it.
Yeah.
I like that. Speaking of different flavor, let's talk about Shadow of Mortality. 13 black Avatar 7/7 with if your life total is less than your starting life total, this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the difference. Jim.
This is a bad card, but it's a 7/7 vanilla creature that sometimes costs 2. Yeah, it's like probably not going to. It kind of sparks an interesting debate. That's like, what's the least that you would pay for a vanilla creature, a vanilla beater in Commander? It's like, what is a 7/7 worth in Commander? If you're paying 2 for this, it's great. If you're paying 15 for this, it's horrendously awful. I might pay up to 5 for this.
I say
maybe
5. Yeah.
Maybe 4.
Well, my position on this is I think this is going to only really be played in decks where you're playing around with CMC values.
Yeah. I have a Vile Smasher deck.
Exactly.
And I'm like, most of the time when I include cards like this, I'm not even casting them. I'm just playing like Riddle of Lightning. I'm playing Kaboom. I'm playing Erratic Explosion.
Yep.
And doming somebody for 15 off of these cards seems great. I love it. And then sometimes it's also just a 7/7. This is probably going to get rid of Avatar of Woe in my deck because it is a higher converted mana cost. And I have been keeping track in my last like 20 games with my Vial Smasher deck, and I've never cast Avatar of Woe for 2 mana. So
Yeah, that's fair.
Continuing the theme of extremely undercosted beaters, we've got Shake Down Heavy, 2 and a black for an Ogre Warrior that is 6/4. Menace. Whenever it attacks, defending player may have you draw a card. If they do, untap Shakedown Heavy and remove it from combat.
this is just Desecration Demon.
Yeah, it's good
2
stuff.
in 1 set. Oh, baby, a double.
I really like this one specifically because it's so hard to block and comes down so early in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Menace on a 6/4, and then if they untap it, you get to draw the card, but then you have a 6/4 blocker.
Yep.
He's so thick.
Like, it doesn't say when he attacks or blocks.
Yes.
Which I think is an important line of text that is absent.
It very much says, I am controlling attacking this game
Yep.
until you find a solution to this.
Yeah. I think it's a cool card.
Yeah, love it.
Next up, Soul of Emancipation, 4 green, white, blue for a Bant Avatar 5/7. That says, when this enters the battlefield, destroy up to 3 other target non-land permanents. For each of those permanents, its controller creates a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying.
They're just out here reprinting Terastodon.
Yep.
I mean, with angels that are 3/3s instead of 4/4s.
Right. It is a little worse because the elephants that you get off Terastodon don't have flying, and this does not have flying. So if you are destroying problematic permanents, you are giving them 3/3 flyers that you inherently cannot block off of this. But also, you're destroying 3 non-land permanents.
And it was
Importantly, Terastodon does hit lands.
Yes.
So you can use it to pop guys, Cradle or Nykthos or Maze
Coffers.
or whatever, Coffers. This does not do that.
Yeah.
I would not expect them to print actual factual Terastodon
Yeah.
because popping lands feels bad generally.
I think this is the type of card that will feel a lot better at a casual table dealing with the problems than it feels at basically anywhere else.
Yeah, sure. This is one of those ones where you like cast this card and you're just like, unless you're blinking it, which I mean, people are going to do that too. But
it is in Bant. Yeah.
unless you're blinking it, this is one of those ones where everybody just looks at it, and when you pick your targets, they're just like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. It really should be that way if you're casting this guy. Next up, we have a Structural Assault on the Structural Assault of Treasures on the format. And it's called Structural Assault. It's 3 red. It's a sorcery. It says destroy all artifacts. Heck yeah. Then Structural Assault deals damage equal to each creature equal to the number of artifacts that were put into graveyards from the battlefield this turn.
Okay, so first of all, I love this.
Yes.
I love specifically the fact that it's templated to care about the number that were put into graveyards and not the number destroyed.
Yes.
I think that's very, very, very clever treasure design.
Yeah.
This means that if you cast it, people can respond by sacking their treasures, but they're still going to take the damage, or their creatures are still going to take the damage.
Literally the only note I have on this is that it doesn't also deal damage to players. I would love it if it did. However, my guess is that likely in testing, this drew a lot of games.
Yeah. If it was each player, it'd be a lot of people just dying. Yeah. I don't think it necessarily needed to be each player as well, but I think it could have been each Planeswalker.
Sure.
That is a good point.
I think Planeswalker could have been in there.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a very cleverly designed card. Props to whoever made this. I really, really like the way that they templated it.
Yeah. Slam this in your Stuffy Doll deck.
Yeah. Little brashy taunter action going on.
Next up is Tenacious Underdog for 1 and a black. It's a human warrior with 3/2, and it has Blitz. First time we've seen Blitz for 2 black, pay 2 life. Blitz is if you cast the spell for its Blitz cost, it gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So it replaces itself and comes out hasty. It also has the text, you may cast Tenacious Underdog from your graveyard using its Blitz ability.
Yep. It's like a grave crawler, but upside.
Yeah.
Seems sweet.
Draw a card, lose 2 life, 4 mana, 3 damage hasty.
Yep.
well, and the interesting thing too is it does not it doesn't say if it was blitzed, exile it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you are just like blitz this, blitz this.
Give me a whip of Erebos on this guy, and I'm laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
Verbos does exile them though?
No, you use the whip of
just
Erebos for the
lifelink.
lifelink.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now maybe the most contentious flavor in the set, Titan of Industry for a 4 green elemental 7/7 with reach and trample. It's a gigantic skyscraper that says when it enters the battlefield, choose 2, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Target player gains 5 life. Create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. Put a shield counter on any creature you control. How do we feel about green getting a gigantic building?
I think that, okay, I'm going to answer a question that you didn't ask. I think the design of this card is very distinctively green.
Yes.
All of the abilities are very distinctively green, except for maybe the shield counter, but I guess that's probably green secondary maybe.
Yeah.
I think this feels like a green card. It's got reach, it's got trample. I think it makes sense that it has reach because it's a building.
Yep.
I think that the name is very clever given the era that we're dealing with.
Sure.
But I think if you had used this name and this like art direction, it feels like a red card.
Yeah.
The card itself, all of the aspects, like the copyable attributes of the card, for sure, very green.
Yeah.
I think the name and the art feel very red.
And then that's mostly what I've seen in the discussion around it.
Yeah.
I don't think like take away the name, take away the art. You're absolutely right. I question what green was going for on a citywide plane the same way that they have on, say, like Ravnica, for example. It just feels a little bit.
Yeah, I do find it interesting that a single building is green, but Hamlet Bat Goliath is red.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, I guess once you get a couple more buildings in there, it becomes red.
Let's talk about my favorite card, Topiary Stomper. 1 green for a plant dinosaur 4/4 with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Topiary Stomper can't attack or block unless you control 7 or more lands. Yeah, I like him. He's cute. He's a cute little guy.
It kind of reminds me of the dinosaur from Ixalan that Crucible of Worlds is.
Yep.
No,
it's Explorers.
Explore.
It explores, right?
Exploration.
It's only attack or block if you have the city's blessing.
Yeah, you have to have the city.
No, that's not
Wayward Sword Tooth.
There it is. It's on the screen.
Yeah, I think that's a very similar card. My buddy Sean sent me this card when it got spoiled with a picture of the screenshot from The Simpsons where Bart uses the expanding dinosaur sponges because that's what this looks like.
Love it.
I appreciate it. I think the card's fine.
That's good. Next up, let's talk about Undercover Operative. 2 blue for a Shapeshifter Rogue 0/0. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with a shield counter on it if you control that creature.
This is like, I feel like blue gets a strictly worse cancel and a strictly better clone in every standard set these days.
Yeah.
And this is that.
Actually, I don't know that we've seen cancel with Set's ability in a hot minute.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about Unleash the Inferno. 1 black, red, green for a Jund instant. Unleash the Inferno deals 7 damage to target creature or planeswalker. When it deals excess damage this way, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that amount of excess damage. I love playing with excess damage.
Yeah. It's like instant trample. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think this card is really cool. I think it is a little overcosted for most of what you'll be going for in Commander.
Yeah.
Again, you're maybe like, I think like the best case scenario for this is that you are dealing 6 to some kind of X6 creature and killing somebody's soul ring.
Esper Sentinel.
Right? Yeah,
Sure.
fair enough. Yeah, I think it's a very cool card. But yeah, I think maybe a little overcosted.
Basically, all the numbers on this one are just a little bit awkward.
Right.
Yeah. The numbers on this next one are not awkward at all. And I know Jim wants to talk about it, so I'm going to say the whole thing and get out of the way. Unlicensed Hearse, 2 mana, vehicle, star, crew 2, tap it, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Unlicensed Hearse, power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards exiled with it.
I think this is one of the best vehicles ever printed. Full stop. Well, for Commander, I should say.
Yep.
Maybe not full stop, but Unlicensed Hearse is like, if you're playing Relic of Progenitus, if you're playing any other like Scavenging Ooze, stuff like that, this is an effect that is maybe as good or better. I will say that this differs from Relic of Progenitus in that it targets. It is up to 2 target cards in graveyards, which means you don't need to have the full 2 to be able to activate it. You can target 0 cards, 1 card, or 2 cards. I will say that if you were to like blink this, or if it gets bounced and you recast it, like it doesn't remember the cards that were exiled with it because it has a linked ability.
Yep.
But I think this is like, if you imagine that this is a non-creature artifact with no crew ability or anything like that, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then you add the crew ability onto it, and suddenly like you cast this turn 2, and by turn 3 or 4, you're attacking with a 6/6 or an 8/8. This card is really good. And I would say in our format, you've pretty much always got targets.
Yes.
With fetch lands, especially with how many fetch lands they're printing, not the like actual Zendikar Onslaught fetch lands, but like the other fetch lands that they've been printing.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot.
Passage.
I think we're going to see a lot of the new fetch lands that they're printing at common in this, or is it uncommon, where you can go get one of the 3 for each thing, and you gain a life when you grab the basic.
Yeah. So you're just doing like graveyard maintenance at the beginning of the game or when this first comes out, and then later on you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to pop that because I don't want that coming back. This is a very good vehicle, and it's well costed. I think that the crew cost is reasonable. I think this is one of the best vehicles ever printed in Commander.
I also think it's a really fun swap out for something like Bajuka Bog. Like if you've got a friend who has that really gross graveyard deck that you hate playing against, Bajuka Bogging them just ends the game for them essentially. Right. Whereas this gives them a fighting chance. Yep. I think it's generically good. It's fun to play around, and you're absolutely right, Jim.
Yeah, and I think this is a lot better when you end up with graveyard decks that rely on like a graveyard based engine.
Yes.
Where you're like, if you've got like Bloodghast and Landfall or something like that, and it's just constantly, like say in a Marin deck, right? You've got Bloodghast, you've got Landfall, and you've got a Sack Outlet, right? It's that like, I'm going to do it once every turn or twice every turn or 3 times every turn and get that creature ETB or the sacrifice benefit. This is the type of card that is just like, no, we're going to put a stop to that.
Absolutely.
So I think it's great. Love it.
Speaking of put a stop to stuff, let's talk about Void Rend. White, blue, black for an Esper instant that says this spell can't be countered. Destroy target non-land permanent.
Oh, yeah. I think card's good. Comparables are like unmake, unlicensed. No, not unlicensed.
Outer End.
Outer End. Yeah.
Anguished unmaking.
Yeah. A lot of un stuff.
Yeah.
I think the can't be countered is great.
Can't be countered. Yeah. Instant speed.
Yep.
Destroy target and hits any non-land permanent. I think that card is great.
Yeah. Big fan. Next up, Widespread Thieving, 2 and a red for an enchantment with Hideaway 5. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a treasure token. Then you may pay Wooburg. If you do, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost.
This one is a little weird. I think you're probably more likely using this as a 3 mana when you cast a multicolored spell, make a treasure.
Yeah.
Rather than like the other of this like hideaway cycle where it's like play the thing, get the hideaway the thing, do the stuff, get the hideaway card. I think you're like probably not casting this hideaway card very often.
And
well, outside of specific decks, you could play this in like Niv Mizzet Reborn would be really good. In Niv Mizzet Reborn. If you're playing a multicolored deck that has like really high multicolored mana density, I imagine we're going to see a lot of charm decks coming out, especially with these new things.
Now that there's 5 more of them, 10 more of them, or whatever, however many.
That deck, I think, gets the hideaway card every time. Outside of that, like you said, I think this is just an upside. It kind of refunds 1 off of every multicolored spell you cast.
Which isn't the worst thing.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Wiretapping, 4 and a blue for Hideaway Enchantment 5. Whenever you draw your first card during each of your draw steps, draw a card. Then, if you have 9 or more cards in hand, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost.
I think this card's cool. I think it's interesting that they didn't also staple you have no maximum hand size onto this.
I kind of like that they didn't.
Yeah.
Because if only for the fact that you can't just get generic value out of it.
Right.
You have to have some sort of plan there. Not that you can't go get, Arcane Thought Vessel. There we go.
Yeah.
Or something like that to shore that up. I guess the only thing that I would have done is if we wanted to do something like that is I would have made it so long as there's nothing under it, you have no maximum hand size.
Oh yeah. So that, nice. I will say it's kind of tough to get up to 9 cards in hand when you're actually doing things. I played Kefnet in Bears and Cars for a little while, and I found I never got to attack with it because you need to play cards to stay in the game.
Yep.
Unless you're drawing a lot of cards, it can be really tough to get up to 9 cards in hand.
And realistically, at that point, it feels, at least in my opinion, a little win-mori.
Yeah.
You don't really need the help of whatever the free spell is.
Well, especially this is a 5 mana enchantment, right? So like if you're doing enough nothing that you can like easily get this off within a couple of turns, like your hideaway spell better be pretty impactful or you're just losing the game.
Think about your turn 5, right? How many cards in hand do you have on average in turn 5?
2 or 3.
2 or 3?
Yeah, zero if I'm being honest.
Yeah, maybe 3.
Yeah, and so you think about it, even if this Howling Minds you every turn, right? It draws you an extra card every draw step. it's still going to take you 4 or 5 turns after turn 5
Right.
to maybe get this. And that's provided you're playing fewer than 2 cards per turn, which when you're on like turns 5 through 10, you want to be casting two cards.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you're going to be falling behind so quickly that again, the hideaway card better be something spectacular.
Yeah, I could see this if you're playing like Edric or something like that. Toss an extra turn under it, great. But even then, I don't think Edric wants this kind of a thing.
I will say that having a 5 mana enchantment that doubles your initial draws isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing wrong with it, but at the same time, the opportunity cost on the hideaway, I just don't know that it gets there. Next up, let's talk about Workshop Warchief.
You mean our Commander Mechanic?
Our Commander Mechanic.
It's 3 green for a Rhino Warrior, 5/3 with Trample. When Workshop Warchief enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. When it dies, create a 4/4 Rhino Warrior creature token. It also has Blitz for 4 green.
Oh, you mean our Thragtusk?
Our Thragtusk, yeah, exactly.
This card, Void Rend, like, what's the opposite of Thragtusk that we have at home or whatever, right? Because who was like, Thragtusk could be a little better.
Yeah. This is like the Thragtusk that you buy at Whole Foods.
Wow. Now, we've got one more before we go to an honorable mention, and that is Zia Torres Envoy. That's 1 black, red, green for a Vashino Warrior with Trample. That's a 5/4. Whenever Zia Torres Envoy deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of your library. You may play a land from the top of your library or cast a spell with mana value less than or equal to the damage dealt from the top of your library without dealing its mana cost, and don't put a card in your hand.
Well, there's a question asked. How much damage can you deal from the top of your library?
I got to read it again. I'm sorry. Whenever Zia Torres Envoy deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of your library. You may play a land from the top of your library or cast a spell with mana value less than or equal to the damage dealt from the top of the library without paying its mana cost if you don't put that card in your hand.
I think damage dealt from the top of the library is really funny. That feels like an uneffect.
Yeah, it also has Blitz for 1 more mana. A generically good card. If I had to read that again, I might quit. I will say one thing that we haven't talked about so much. They did get a little bit wordier in this set, even than Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, it feels like. That being said, outside of actual reading problems, I do not think that there are that many comprehension issues.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a mouthful to say out loud, but basically the whole deal is if I bop Elliot in the schnoozle, I get to play a land from the top of my deck or up to however much damage I dealt in CMC.
Yep.
Simple enough.
Yep. Yeah.
Or just draw it. Right? Or just put it in your hand. Yeah. This card's really cool.
So there are some complex cards in the set, I agree. I do think that some of the complexity comes from the fact that some of these effects are actually fairly unique and they're templated that way specifically for a reason. We talked about that Jund Ascendancy.
Yes.
And the reason why it's templated that way is because they want you to be able to choose when you do the effect, right? So if you have a creature that you want to play, and that's the same creature that you want to play from your graveyard when you play a creature later on, right? You can say, play the creature, sacrifice it. You can choose at that point whether or not you want the effect to happen. Then later on in the turn, if you say, no, I don't want it to happen, you can go sacrifice a different creature and say, yeah, okay, now this is when I want it to happen.
Right.
They could have templated it way easier if they just said the first time you sacrifice a creature, do this. And then you can't do it for the rest of the turn.
Yep.
That would have been much simpler, but it's a different effect. Right. So I think templating things in a way where it does something unique and, provides you with a little more in-game flexibility might make it a little less intuitive, but it makes the cards more interesting.
I say harder to read, easier to play is a thing that I'm willing to do.
Sure.
Yeah. Last but not least, Jim, you wanted to bring up one more card that we talked about briefly.
Best card in the set.
Best card in the set. Talk about it.
This is a common. It's a blue enchantment aura for 1 blue. It's called Witness Protection. I think this is a masterpiece of Magic design. I think if there were Magic Oscars, this would get one. It's an enchant creature, and it says enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green and white citizen creature token with base power and toughness 1/1 named legitimate business person. And then reminder text, it loses all other card types, creature types, and names. I think this is a home run in every single aspect of card design. It's a perfect card.
Extremely flavorful.
It's a perfect card.
This is the new best Lignify or whatever effect, right?
So on top of the fact that functionally it's quite a good card. Like you said, comparables like Darksteel Mutation, Lignify, Song of the Dryads, Kenris Transformation, all of those. But also, it's a home run in that, like, you're putting a creature into witness protection and saying you are now a legitimate business person. That
business person is 15 out of 10.
Yeah, like they didn't have to go that far on this card, but they did, and I'm so happy they did. Yeah. So what I want from you, everybody, what I want from you is list the funniest creature that you can think of that could go into witness protection. I have seen Dryad Arbor, which I think is really funny because it's just a tree.
Just a tree. Yeah.
So I think that's probably my pick right now. List your pick in the comments below for what you think is the funniest creature to put in witness protection.
In the meantime, though, folks, I had a lot of fun doing this set review. If you want to check out some more set review goodness, just check around on the channel. There will be a live stream that features Elliot and myself where we talked about all the Legends and Commander cards from Streets of New Capenna. This is shaping up to be one of my favorite sets that they've put out since the last favorite set that they put out, which was Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So
yeah, two home runs in a row. Absolutely.
Killing it here in 2022. I'm really excited for stuff coming down the pipe. If you enjoy this type of content, please let us know by leaving a like, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support us more directly, the Patreon's right there for as little as $1. You can get early access to gameplay episodes, access to the Discord where you can come tell me to speak slower. And you can even hang out with people like Elliot. And who doesn't want to hang out with Elliot?
I will say one more thing. Alex and Elliot don't actually know about this, so I'm going to spoil it. If you have made it this far, good for you. We are actually going to be offering a physical reward to our $20 patrons. This is a tier that we haven't announced yet. We are going to have an additional physical reward sometime in, I don't know when, relative to when this gets released. It's going to be sometime like probably early to mid-June. So if that's something you're interested in, it is eligible for existing patrons who want to bump up their pledge to $20 or to new patrons that come in at the $20 tier. So in addition to that, you'll also get your name in the credits of our gameplay episodes, and it's a really cool time. But yeah, this is, if you play Magic, if you play Flesh and Blood, you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on the $20 patron tier.
Interesting. Maybe I'll become a $20 patron. Any case, folks,
you work here.
Yeah, right. Any case, folks, thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time.
Hey, thank you for checking out the Spike Feeders on YouTube. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you close the window. Or you can click on this link to check out our other great videos.